everybody, it's Dr. Erin here, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research, and I am here with another Abbey Research Reads book review. And this one is specific and ties together with our content coverage over on our main YouTube channel, the Colonizers World Tour series that we do every year. And for the month of October, we are looking at the impact of colonization on four large kind of umbrella groups of Indigenous peoples. And so for this week coming up, we're looking at Indigenous peoples of Canada, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And so that is why we strategically planned this book review, Bevann Fox's Genocidal Love, for this week so that it coincides with our Colonizers World Tour coverage. Bevann Fox is a member of the Pasqua First Nation, originally from Piapot First Nation in Canada. And this book, Genocidal Love, Life After Residential School, is a book that I picked up when I was visiting our beloved Eleanor in Canada earlier this year. And, you know, we've talked a lot about residential schools, and particularly a lot of empathy exercises in the last 6 months about new revelations about the impact of residential schools on Indigenous peoples in Canada, and the papal visit and all that carry on. So this is a very timely read, and I read it over the summer here, and it's a very hard book to read. It's short, but it's so important, and it's, for me, it's the best book I've read, and I haven't read that many, but it's the best book that I've read that showcases both the intergenerational trauma of Indigenous peoples and how the trauma that their parents and their grandparents have experienced because of colonization impacts them and their self-concept and their identity and their relationship with their indigeneity, but also the damage done to the communal and cultural structure traditionally found in Indigenous people groups by the residential system or by Indian boarding schools. And this book is the perfect kind of toe dip into the waters of residential school literature. There's a great foreword by Michelle Kupel, who's the Canada Research Chair in Truth, Reconciliation, and Indigenous Literatures and the Associate Professor, Department of English in the University of Regina in Saskatchewan. And she gives quite a great account of the literature and the historical literature around residential school experiences and maybe fictional literature around them. So while Genocidal Love is a true story, Bevann has fictionalized her part in it, and so we are told the story of Myrtle. And all the names and have been changed, but it is essentially her story, her experience of being taken to a residential school when she was a young child, I think 7. She wasn't in a residential school for that long, 6 months, maybe a year, but you can see how severe the abuse was, both culturally and physically and sexually. The picture on the front is a piece of cut hair, and one of the first stories she tells was of how they insisted on cutting her hair when she got there because First Nations, Métis, Inuit peoples were treated by settler colonialists as dirty, as unclean, as all of the stereotypes that we would associate with the horribly derogatory term of savage. And reading her description of Myrtle's hair being cut at the beginning was one of the more potent examples of what cultural genocide looks like, and how it feels to the person that genocide is being enacted upon. But I wanted to read a little bit from Michelle's foreword here, because I thought it was such a great explanation of a concept that we don't have in white settler communities as much. I am gonna mispronounce the words, and I apologize to whichever nation or band that Michelle belongs to. I don't believe it's listed in here. We're doing this. We're doing it live, folks. I'm trying to find this information so that I can be accurate. I don't believe it's listed in here. But she says she was speaking to a generous elder who shared with her the Cree view of the oasis, roughly translated to bright spirit or child. And the elder drew a circle representing the oasis. She drew another circle around the oasis, representing a surrounding kinship system of love and care, including parents, grandparents, siblings, and extended family members. When the government removed children from the center of the family circle and put them in the boxed residential school system, they disconnected the child from their language, their culture, their land, their family, and identity. They broke the circle of relations and therefore of being. The broken circle and its legacies are with us to this day. This book is deeply concerned with healing from barbarous governmental systems of control, containment, and ultimately genocide. Many authors of residential school literature have used writing as one form of therapy on their healing journeys. So too does Bevann Fox. This book has much to teach us about strength, resistance, recovery, and reconnection. The stories of survivors of residential schooling are offerings that we need to value, respect, and share with others. But I think that sentence, that they broke the circle of relations and therefore of being, was so impactful, and really set the stage for me for reading this book. And, obviously I'm a white person. I'm not an Indigenous person at all. But I have listened and heard from so many Indigenous folks talk about the importance of relationships and relations with the land, relations with the animals, relations with the planet, relations with people, with your culture, your community, your identity. And that oasis, that circle, is representative of those relationships and those relations. And that's what colonization did. That's what colonialism did, and the cultural genocide perpetuated on Indigenous people groups across the world, but in specific reference here across what is now Canada, broke that circle and broke that sense of being. And the stories that Bevann tells in here, presented as Myrtle, are very, very little specifically referencing the trauma she experienced in the residential school. It's much more about, as it says, life after. So it's about, I think it's like 10 or 15 pages of the book are actually specifically about the experiences she had at the residential school. And it's more about how it impacted her ability to have relationships, her feelings about her own body, about her indigeneity, about her sexuality and her relationships with intimate partners and her sexual relationships, and her relationship with her children, with her parents, with her reserve and the people on her reserve. And you really see in 100 and 200 pages what that impact looks like. So it's a difficult but necessary read. as Michelle said, these stories are offerings that we have to respect and share and value. And so the good doctors of Abbey Research respect and share and value this offering and this story of Myrtle told by Bevann Fox, and we recommend it for you as well. There will be a link in the downstairs below where you can find a copy of this book for yourself from the University of Regina Press. As one of Kristen's online friends says, Regina rhymes with fun. And have a look out this week for our coverage of Indigenous peoples of Canada, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We learned so much about these larger categories of Indigenous humans and smaller specific details. And then on the Wednesday as well, we'll have the piece of art we covered, which is a documentary called The People of the Katawapiskak River, which has a lot to do with ongoing relationships between First Nations, specifically a First Nations band in Northern Ontario, and the Canadian government. So have a look out for that. We'll be sharing more resources as always as we read them. I have stacks of books on Indigenous experiences from across North America that I will be reading and getting up on Abbey Research Reads for y'all when I have them. So that's all I've got for a little bit of a lengthy review, but necessary all the same. And hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. Take care.